Okay, this is our first one. We're starting out now. The name of the channel is Dr. Jim Talks Wisdom and DIY. And the reason that is because I have about a bazillion years of experience, life experiences, that I think are going to help other people. I have a couple of passions. One of them is called TAT, Tapas Acupressure Technique. And if you um, search the web and look for tatlife.com, you'll see Tapas Fleming's site. And this is where I learned it, or this is who I learned it from. And it has become an incredible life-saving protocol. I have retired a couple of times, and it just never seemed to have worked out. The last time I retired was back in 2000, around 2000, and I got into day trading, and in the crash of 2001, April 13th, by the way, I lost everything, and I brought a tear to my eye. But I thought, nope, we're gonna start over. So I realized I had to go back to work, and in my process of updating my skills, basically I was doing hypnosis in those days, just regular hypnosis and visualization, which, by the way, is a good service in itself. It can overcome and change a lot of old habits that you have that you want to change. It can motivate you. It helps to clear cancer. There's all kinds of things that we'll get into that later. But as I was updating my skills, I ran across a website that Tapas Fleming had put together, and I decided to take her training. So I did. I took her training to become a TAT specialist or a TAT guide, and it proved to be life-saving for myself. And then I went to work at a exclusive weight loss clinic in Beverly Hills run by Susie Pruden. We mostly did hypnosis, but she was gracious enough to allow me to use the TAT protocol on people that would get the weight off, but they couldn't keep it off. And what that was is that they really needed to resolve the issues that kept the weight on. And one of the reasons was that we learned from Carolyn Mace in her wonderful book, Sacred Contracts, excuse me. It's Carolyn M-Y-S-E, and she's an incredible motivated speaker. She's a medical intuitive, and she's written, I don't know, 20 plus books, maybe 30 books by now. But in her book, Sacred Contracts, she talks about the archetypal behavior patterns that we kind of adopted from Carl Jung. He kind of was the founder of the archetypal behavior patterns. And she goes on to explain that basically we have about 12 of them, and we share 4 in common: the child, the prostitute, the saboteur, and the victim. The prostitute is not a sexual entity. It's where you'll do a job that you hate, but you have a big paycheck. So it's an interesting study. I think you can get it online, or you can pretty well get it pretty cheap or whatever. But in the back of the book, she goes through about over 100 different examples of the archetypal behavior patterns. She shows you how to track them, how to look at them, how to find out what house they were in when you were born, find out where they're located now. But the essence of what it is that sometimes these archetypal behavior patterns, or these voices in our head that we listen to, have different agendas. And until they get all lined out to be in focus for working on our greater goodness, you're going to have some splinter effects. You're going to have some effects where you could get the weight off, and then you walk into a drugstore one New Year's Eve, and somebody gives you a wolf whistle, And all of a sudden, boom, because of what had happened to you in your past, you started putting the weight back on. And so working at Susie's clinic gave me an opportunity to do about 1,500 of these regarding in the weight loss area. And what I discovered was that it gave me a vast knowledge of how to help people get through these things. So that kind of gave me a start at something that I realized it was really helping people. So one of the things, and we'll go into it later on, but a few of the things that TAT can do is it can clear fixed thinking, trauma, drama, bad attitudes, chemical exposure, childhood issues, nightmares, fears, clearing the day's energy, discovering your hidden best qualities, family issues, phobias, medical interventions, drug and alcohol issues, money and success, rape and sexual abuse, fears of driving on the freeway. Pets sometimes need help, so we can help pets. We can do surrogate treatments. We can unblock energies. We can work through anger and resentment issues, forgiveness, sleeping disorders, ADD, compulsive thinking, eating disorders, enhanced self-image, insomnia, compulsive behavior, anxiety, depression, and the list goes on and on. It's like a Swiss Army knife that has a blade for just about everything. So that's some of the things that we're going to be covering over the next weeks and months as I do these podcasts. And I need to thank Gary Vanderchuck for even getting me on this. I mean, I'm 76 years old. I should be retired, but I do have some passions that I like to explore and help other people with. So I've watched him a lot, and he's given a lot of insight to people about how to get online and follow your passion and do these kind of things. And he'll give these big speeches to thousands of people. And he tells that only a small percentage of the people that are listening to him will even follow through. And so I thought, well, okay, I'm going to follow his advice and I'm going to follow through. I know that this isn't the best perfect setup. I don't have the proper background yet, which I'm trying to learn how to do all that. And it was a lot of learning just figuring out how to do this video, by the way. Thank God I had a lot of the equipment on hand, so I just need to put it in the right order and make it work. So that's my main passion. But also through the years, I have done a lot of handiwork, handyman things, repair stuff. I started working with my dad building houses when I was 11 or 12 years old, so I could swing a hammer back in those days. And he taught me about all the aspects of home building, electrical work and plumbing and air conditioning and all the different things that are involved in that. So consequently, it gave me a smattering of things that I learned about, which has helped me throughout the years to do the remodeling things that I need to do in my own home or helping other people, giving them suggestions. He also built furniture. He loved to build early American furniture. And part of that was a real challenge to me. I didn't like the early American furniture. In fact, he told me when I got married, he said, I'll build your whole house full of furniture, but it has to be all early American. And I thought, I wasn't into early American anymore. So I went off on my own and I turned my garage into a shop and I started making things that I liked. And I remember I built a highboy and had those cantilever legs in the front, which I didn't turn those out. That's way too much work. You can buy them already done up real cheap online. So I bought those online and I made the first thing. And the reason I made that was because somebody had asked me to build them a custom file cabinet to make it look like a piece of furniture. So I built basically the lower part of a highboy, and I put just two big drawers in there that were actually file cabinets. So I developed a file cabinet system for the guy, and he was thrilled with it. But anyway, I built this high boy, and my dad came to visit, and he was like, wow, you really passed me up in being able to, build furniture and stuff. He said, this is really a beautiful piece. And that was almost the first compliment that I'd ever gotten from him. My dad was alcoholic, and he beat me a lot, so I've got a lot of experience in that area. And he basically would come home from work, and we never knew if it was Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde walking in the door. So consequently, I had a pretty rough childhood. And as a matter of fact, I had a very colorful life up until the time I was 33 years old. I did a lot of crazy things, and I drank a lot, and I have a lot of stories I can tell later on, but we'll see how that goes. But finally, on September 15th, 1978, I decided that I'd really had enough, and I was able to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's an interesting story in itself. At the first meeting, I had gone to a meeting 9 years before, in 1969. There were people in the neighborhood, and my wife had kind of done an intervention, and they dragged me down to a meeting in the barrios of Tacoma, Washington, on the second floor. And I went into this meeting, and it was like full of smoke and full of a lot of people that looked like they were losers to me. And they had a sign on the podium that said, if you have a drinking problem, you're in the right place. And I thought, well, boy, that's kind of stupid. I don't have a drinking problem. I have a not drinking problem. So I was able to, because of the cigarettes and the smoke and everything, I was able to talk my wife out of me going to any more of those meetings. So 9 years had elapsed, and I went to another meeting. And since I'd gone to that first one, and the reason I went the second time was because my wife had found a brochure at the back of the church that said, if you or one of your loved ones has a drinking problem, just try AA for 6 times. So I thought, well, I'd already done one in 1969, so I only have to go to 5 more. So I thought, I can handle that. So I went to the first meeting, and I was plenty drunk going there. And my wife put her hand up in my jacket to kind of hold me up. And I heard some things that they talked about in the meeting. I heard about the fellowship and about the big book, how it only cost the same as a fifth of vodka. And back in those days, a fifth of vodka only cost $5.25. So I thought, well, that was interesting. And I listened to some of these people talk, and one guy had like 17 years in the program, and I thought, man, he's lying. There's nobody can go 17 years without a drink. Well, anyway, I went ahead and bought the big book. No, I didn't buy the big book at the first meeting. They said anybody can go a day without drinking. So I thought, oh, I'll try that. So I went the next day, and I didn't have a drink. And then I went to the meeting. I was sober, and I got to hear a little bit more about the big book and about the fellowship and about going a day without drinking. And they gave me a list of people that I could contact if I needed to. And I thought, well, this is really nice. And then I bought the big book. And then I went home, and on the way home, I stopped at Safeway, and I bought a 3-liter bottle of wine. Because they didn't say anything about going the night without drinking. It was just a day. So I thought, okay, so I'm sitting at home drinking this wine, reading the big book. I got pretty much through it. And so then about midnight, I decided, well, I would try out the phone numbers. So I called this first guy on the list, and I don't want to disclose his name, but I got to tell you, he told me some things on the phone that really shook me up. And the essence of what he was telling me was that any SOB can get sober and stay sober for 24 hours. And this is a life or death program. So if you decide to get on it, then get on it, but don't bother me again. And I thought, well, boy, I'll prove to him, I'll show him I can do that. And that started my sobriety. and I've been sober ever since. And I'm over 42 years of sobriety now, so that's a big deal. So I understand drugs and alcohol, so that's a big deal. So anyway, let me get back to the gadgets and the DIY part of this thing. I have done a lot of things that I wasn't afraid to do. For one thing, I had a big shop, but as I've downsized now, I'm no longer married, and I'm by myself pretty much most of the time. So I live in a condominium, and it has a 2-car garage. So I kind of set myself up a smart shop that I could utilize. When I pulled my car out, I could kind of set up my saws and do some things, and I could do remodeling and do things like that. So one of the things I did was, when I moved in here, I contracted to have all these hardwood floors put in, but the guy wanted to charge me $50 a stair. And I had like 27 of them, and I thought, whoa, that's not, I don't want to spend that kind of money. That's more than the whole contract was. So I thought, well, I went out and bought $500 worth of used tools, and I set my shop up, and I did the stairs myself. So that got me into thinking that, you know, you can do some things even in limited space, and some people don't know that. And so that's kind of the information, that the wisdom that I want to pass on to people. And then the other thing, I had these wrought iron banisters, and it looked like I was in a jail. And so I did some research for about a month and a half about how to, the best way to turn this thing into utilizing, instead of having the wrought iron, having glass, tempered glass put between the posts. And what I discovered was the posts themselves, if they have feet on them, they cost about $150 a piece. So I realized that for $30, I could get a nice a nice tube that would slide over the old post. So I cut all the wrought iron out, kept the post, and slid the tubes over it. But then I had to make sure about the inside diameter, about fitting the saddles, and about, you know, what the top round piece would look like as far as the banister itself. And in the first glass shop I went to, the guy said, no, I can't do this. He said, you know, the new law says that you have to have half-inch tempered glass. Well, the clamps for the half-inch tempered glass are about $30 a piece, and I needed 80 of them. But if you use 3/8-inch glass, which is the old law, and nobody knows when I put this in, now they will, but you could use clamps that only cost a little less than $3. And so, like I said, I did the research for about a month and a half and put that in. But those are kind of things that really make places look spiffy, and make things look really good, and that's a big deal. So let me get back to a little bit about what happened after I retired and then had to go back to work. After I updated myself, I started working not only with doing the weight loss thing, but I also discovered that one of the things that I ran across, and I had done a lot of work with women with breast cancer. And in those days, what we did was we basically did a visualization hypnotherapy session where we would imagine tying off the capillaries to the tumor, because that's how it gets fed. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit more later on, because this protocol has changed over the years, okay? And so what it does is it starves the tumor. And this is for somebody that isn't going to be taking chemotherapy or having radiation, okay? This is somebody that's going to participate in their own healing, and they're going to do the DIY. They're going to do it on their own, which a lot of people do. And so because it starves it, it shrinks it down, and pretty soon, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month later, it gets down to about the size of a BB. But then I got cancer, and I thought, whoa, I thought maybe I'm paying some kind of an old debt here. Maybe I didn't clean up my act when I was doing my 5th step, and I made amends to the people that I could make amends to, except when to do so would injure them or others. Those are some of the guidelines that they use in most of the 12-step programs. So in any event, I didn't want to have to go through all this thing. And I didn't want to have to go through it for as long as it takes to do all this. So what I did was I came up with a better system. Instead of tying off the capillaries, I imagined little Pac-Man that would go in and would eat up the cancer, take it back out, and it was multitasking. What it was doing was blocking the tumors from being fed, and also it was eating them up at the same time. So halfway through my treatment, halfway through my protocol, I got to thinking that it wasn't because I had an old karmic debt that I needed to pay. It had to do with me being a better guide so that I could help other people with cancer because I've experienced it. And quite frankly, most everything that I have done, I have walked the walk. And part of walking the walk is gives you a lot of insight about what's really going on. Yeah, my story isn't exactly like some of the people's story that have been through it, but it's quite similar. And when we sit in on a group meeting and we listen to other people talk about what had happened to them, we don't want to get nitpicky. And we want to look at the similarities about what they're talking about. So the guy with the 17 years, he really wasn't lying. He was telling the truth. But I wasn't ready to listen. I was in a lot of denial. But I got through that pretty quickly. So these are some of the things we're going to go over in the next, months or so. The next thing I want to talk about is, the new protocol on cancer. So what we want to do is, you might not know this, but because we're under stress and because the lifestyle that we're living and all the things that are going on in this world, and we're being bombarded every day with more information than the average people in the 1900s got. It took them a week to get as much information as we get in like 4 minutes on the internet or on the news. So we're just being bombarded with way too much information. And in fact, one of the things I suggest is that you limit your amount of watching CNN or Fox News or whatever it might be to at least only 15 minutes a day. That's a good suggestion because your life will go a lot better if you don't watch so much of this stuff that's going on. Yeah, you need to be informed, but at the same time, you don't need to be bombarded with all this stuff because all it does is works on your psychic, and it helps. It puts you under stress, and when we're under stress, it lowers our immune system. It messes up our fighter cells. It invites bad things, bad uh, ailments into our system, including cancer. So we need to limit that to a little bit less. So when we take an active part in our healing, that means that we're going to do our part and our best to do what we can do, what we can contribute to. So part of that is taking an active part is being willing to do some of these things. So when you become willing, that's like the first step. It's like the first step in any type of thing where you all of a sudden you recognize you need to do something and you're willing to do it. That's a big deal. So that willingness helps to establish team. So you're into a team with your oncologist or your doctor, or yourself and myself, and we form a team to give you the best healing protocol that you can have. So we were always in contact, with permission. We're in contact with the oncologist or the doctor, or the client, the patient lets the doctor know that we're doing this visualization or whatever we're doing. And so some of the times we don't want to cut off the capillaries because we need to have all those chemicals come in there and feed that tumor with the chemicals so it'll kill it. So because right now they're getting very focused. The chemicals that you get now aren't like it was in the old days. I mean, that you'd lose all of your hair and the salivary glands were gone, and it was really traumatic. I mean, the cure was worse than what was going on with you. So like I say, we form a pack, we form a team, and we work through these things, and we get people cleared up with cancer. So it's a big deal. One of the things we're going to also talk about later on is death and dying. I have had an experience of, oh boy, back in 1982, my abusive father called me up one Wednesday and he said, I'm going to commit suicide. And I'm like, wow, Dad, this is such a big decision. How about you wait until Saturday where I can come up and visit you and say goodbye? And he said, he kind of laughed. Yeah, okay, go ahead. And I was living in Napa at the time, and he was living in Vacaville. So I had loaned him some tools of mine, so I know I needed to get up there anyway to pick up my tools because I don't think his third wife was going to let me in the house after that. But anyway, I went up there, and on the way up, I thought, well, what can I do? I mean, I really knew that this was going to be it with him because, his third wife had left him. He had gone through open heart surgery, and it had never, his chest blew up about 2 weeks after he left the hospital, and they found out he had a staph infection. They couldn't close him up. He had to have this fluff where they would change it 2 or 3 times a day, and he'd sued the government, and there was like my dad was always had these visions of grandiosity. He was going to make $1 million off of this. Well, it didn't turn out to be $1 million, and what money he did make or did get through the suit, the attorney took most of it. So he was really broken, and I knew that he was at probably the lowest point in his life that he's ever been. So I thought, on the way up, I decided that I would be the best son that I could be. And when I got there, he opened the door, and here's this little guy that was 5'6". All my life, I thought he was a giant, and I'm 5'8". He was 2 inches shorter than I was, and I thought, he's in these pajamas that are bloody and full of piss and poop and everything, and I thought, oh man, we got to get this guy cleaned up. So I got him showered up and cleaned up into fresh pajamas, and kind of cleaned up his house a bit because it was a mess. Let me tell you, he just let himself go. And then I, was out in the garage loading. I got a little trailer, and we were loading up the trailer and everything. And we got everything done. And when it was time to go, he wanted to have his last meal from his favorite restaurant. And back in those days, this restaurant wasn't doing takeout orders. Everybody does takeout now, but back in those days, they didn't. But we'd gotten a hold of the restaurant, and he'd agreed that he would go ahead and fix my dad his favorite steak and all this stuff with the fixing and everything on it. So I went over and picked it up and brought it back, and he had his nice meal. And when we were getting ready to leave, I asked him for forgiveness. I just held him in my arms. He wasn't used to that, but I held him in my arms, and I said, Dad, I want to ask your forgiveness for all the hurt and the pain and the uneasiness and all the things that I had done throughout my life when I was with you, that you were hurt, that you felt bad about, or that you disciplined me over, or you beat me because of it. And all he said, he started crying. It's only the second time in my life I'd seen him cry. He cried once when my sister bailed out in the middle of the night, ran off and got married. And he cried that day. And he said, the reason that I beat you so much was because I saw so much of myself in you, I wanted to beat it out of you. And I thought, wow, talk about closure. It was a gift. I mean, I realize it now. At the time, it was like, wow, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And so I left, and the next day, that was Saturday, and the next Sunday morning I called, and a police lieutenant answered the phone. And I said, oh, is my dad there? And he said, yeah. I said, can I talk to him? He said, no, he committed suicide. So I thought, wow, I was right. But I was devastated, totally devastated. Even though he had been very abusive to me, he was still my dad. But I thought, wow, this is like really hard to take this. So I had to do a lot of soul searching over why he did that, and all of the ramifications about that kind of dying. But later on, it served me well, because over the next, I don't know how many years, 30 years, it was 30 years, I played with the idea of doing that same thing. I never could verbalize it because I know better. I don't want to go on a 72-hour hold because somebody's thinking I might take action on me doing myself in. But I could associate with people that do that, or have those ideas and have those thoughts. And then after I turned the age, after my dad had died, it went away. And I thought, good, because I didn't need to keep dealing with that. And it wasn't a paramount thought, but it was just every once in a while it would come up. But in 2019, I had my son, my oldest son, was in the hospital up in Redding, California. And he had cancer of the liver, the kidney, and the membrane that holds your stomach in was so full of tumors that it wasn't flexible anymore, and so he couldn't eat. It pained him to eat. Even drinking water would kill him. And I had to go up there not as a father. I had to go up there as a therapist, and I had to put that hat on and help him to get through this. So one of the things that he was afraid of dying. And so over the years, we had done a lot of past life regression work with him. And he had a wizard, for a better word, that he would go back and visit this wizard of his. And then he did experience several past lives. And that's a whole nother study in itself. I mean, I do past life regressions with people too, and that's an absolutely fascinating thing to happen. Most people that go through it, at first they don't want to say anything because it's so foreign to them. And so I just have them look at their feet and tell them, describe your feet to me. What are they on? And what are you standing on? And where are you at? And then look around your surroundings. So then we can get into it. So anyway, what we did was I had him go through the transitions that he went through from one life to the next. And then a lot of people talk about the in-between. And I don't know if there's past lives or if there's a next life for us or not. But you know what? I'm not gonna put that out of my mind and think that it's not absolutely not true. I want to be open-minded enough to think, well, there could be something there, okay? So if that's the case, and maybe there is an afterlife and a forelife, and maybe you do go through a transition where they go down to the Akashic records and they pull your file and they open it up and they say, oh, this is what you learned in this life, and that life. And so when you come down on this plane this time, this is what we want you to learn. I know that's a lot to think about, and maybe it's for a lot of people, they're going to just turn this off, but it's okay. I'm just planting seeds right now. I just want you to be a little open-minded. So in Carolyn Mace's book about the sacred contract, she talks about this same thing. She talks about getting together with your guardian angels and your guides, and you figure out what you're going to do. But the caveat is you don't remember what you're supposed to learn when you're born. You have to figure it out. So here we are going through this life plane, and we're trying to figure this all out, and it's a mystery. And thank God, I have been able to live 2 separate lives. The one before I was drinking, or the one, when I was drinking, and the one after I stopped drinking. And I'm telling you, it has given me so much insight and wisdom about how life can really become. And I'm not saying that you got to stop drinking to have this happen, or using or doing drugs or whatever it is, because really, that's not the problem. It's really the thinking that we have. We have living problems that we need to clear up. It isn't so much the drug problem. Yeah, that could be it could be contributing to it, but that's just a Band-Aid thing to put on something where there's deeper things that we have to deal with. That's where the tapas acupressure technique comes in, the TAT protocol. It helps to clear all these kind of things. And we're going to go through extensively about how that works and how we can maybe set up some groups. I may set up 10 to 15 people in a Zoom group, and I'll kind of show you how it works, and that'll be free. I'm also available to do one-on-one Zoom things, and that will cost, but there's a sliding scale involved, so don't worry about that. We'll fit it into everybody's budget. And I don't take insurance, and I don't take checks. We use Zelle, Z-E-L-L-E, to make payments. Or you send me a money order, and I'll call you up, and we'll do it that way. But anyway, getting back to my son, I got him through the fear of dying, and then the next visit I had with him, he said, Dad, I want to commit suicide. And I'm like, well, I did too good a job, I think. I don't know. But I got to thinking about it. And I thought about all the pain. He was probably only weighed like maybe 120 pounds. And at one time, he was a pretty robust individual. Maybe he even weighed less than 100. Maybe he was only 110 pounds. I don't know. But he was in a lot of pain. And I thought, there's no quality of life going on with him. And he wasn't ever going to get out of this hospital. And the only way he was going to exit that hospital was in a body bag or through the morgue. And I finally came to that realization, not only as a therapist, but as a father. And I got to tell you, that's a major leap. When you come to that decision that your son is better off dead than alive, that's major stuff, okay? But I was able to figure that all out and get through it. I did a lot of tap work on myself. And so I said, let's don't be rash about this. Let's do it the right way. I said, there are protocols. I had done some research about it after he told me that. And I said, there are some protocols that you can do. And there's some things that we can help you with. And there is some California laws about how you can, end of life protocols they're called. And they're not very good. I mean, they're not very humane, maybe is what the word is. What they do is you make a request from your doctor, and I think you have to have 2 doctors. You make the request to 2 doctors, and then 30 days later you make the request again that you want to go through this, and then they're mandated to write you a prescription. It's like a death cocktail, and you go to the pharmacy and you get this death cocktail, and you get it filled. And you have to be able to drink 4 ounces of water. You come home, you take the pills, you drink the 4 ounces of water, and with 2 or 3 hours later, you're dead. And I'm thinking, that's a little cold. And part of this thing is the hospitals don't want you to do it in the hospital, because one of the things that they track is how many people died in the hospital. So it messes up their statistics, so to speak, okay? But the good part is there's an organization of doctors in California that travel all over the state, and for a reasonable amount, they'll come in, they'll get the prescription, they'll get it filled. Usually you go to like a motel, because it's not good to die at home, because if you die at home, it has to be put on if you want to sell the house, it has to be put on the house, the disclosure stuff about somebody died in the house. So that's not always a good thing. So you go to a motel. You don't tell the motel, of course, what you're going to do, but you go to the hotel, and the doctor goes with you, and then he gets a prescription, and he has you take the prescription, and then you drink the water, and then he stays with you until you pass. So that's kind of what we'd outlined for him. Okay, I'd already kind of made the preliminary contacts with the people, and I'd already kind of worked through that. So the next visit, when I went up there to visit him, no, it wasn't that. I didn't get to go up on the next visit. The visit in December of 2019 would have been, I would have been up there on the 14th, and on that Monday, I think Monday was the 12th. Monday, the 12th of December 2019, they put him on morphine because it was really bad. And when they do that, when they go on morphine, that's the last bit. They know that within a few hours or a few days, that whoever is going to be on the morphine, because they can control how much morphine they get, it just breaks down all their body organs and things, and the next thing you know, they pass away. So I was ready to fly up there on Wednesday evening, and I got a call from my daughter-in-law, who, by the way, is a year older than I am. And that was kind of interesting. But she's a wonderful gal, and they were 2 peas in a pod. He was an old soul, and she was kind of a young soul. And so they matched up perfect in this world. And she said the hospital called, and they said that there's no use going up there, because he probably isn't gonna make it through the night. And so Tuesday afternoon, I got a hold. The nurses had met me, and they said, "Wow, I wish that more that you could be here more often for helping these people out get through this thing, because we saw a lot of what you did with your son and how he got through this, and how it became a painless death for him, and it became something that he, instead of was so afraid of, he was welcoming it. And so I asked him, I said, can you put the phone up to my son's ear and let me talk to him so I can say goodbye? And so still, it still hurts a bit. I said, I'm really proud of you, son. All that you have accomplished in your life and all that you've done and all you've overcome. Because he was also an addict. And at one time, his drug dealer took him to a recovery house in San Jose. And he stayed there for like a year, and he did recover. And he had, I don't know, it was like 20 years of sobriety. And I told him how proud I was of him, and that I know that God was going to welcome him with open arms. And then I hung up, and 2 hours later, my daughter-in-law called, and she said, I didn't get a chance to get there, but he did pass away. And I thought, yeah, but he passed away in peace. And so, wow, that's just some of the things we're going to cover in these next weeks and months. And I'm going to improve my website. I'm going to improve the banners, and I'm going to fix the background. And I know that I'll get suggestions from people on how to make it better so that the presentation is a much more professional. But I wanted to do it because I have so much content that's so important to get out there before I die. And I know I'm going to live to 100 years old, and I want to do the best that I can to help enrich this world with what I know really works. And I want you to take advantage of. A lot of it's going to be free. And so don't worry about you have to pay for anything. You don't. It's going to be at no cost. Some people are going to need some individual work, and we'll work on the sliding scale on that. So that's all I have for right now. And I want to say thank you for inviting me into your computer. and I hope you have a blessed day. Oh boy.